station where unknown forces strike the edge of ecology.
Well, we're 2 weeks now roughly into this lockdown measure in the UK as a result of what's going on with the coronavirus virus globally. So Peter and I thought we'd just get together on the phone to just have a bit of a chat about what's going on and how we've experienced things in Brighton in the UK, on the south of England, for those who may not be aware. Generally, I mean, just from my perspective, I've got Peter on the line coming through on the speakerphone. Hello. So from my perspective, I think we're probably both of the opinion it's been sort of surreal periods for sure. I mean, I work full time in the IT industry, and one of the things that I noticed immediately was I'm not a key worker by any means, so I got told we all got told we had to work from home, which I didn't really have a problem with because I work from home a lot anyway. But everyone around me was acting like it was a really big deal because they're not used to home working. I think maybe it's a generational thing, but some of the kind of boomer generation, I suppose, home working is not really necessarily as common. So people had to get taught how to set up machines and how to set up microphones to do Skype calls, blah, blah, blah. So there was that stage, and then you ease into working from home. It's not really an issue. But then that was the kind of first stage of it. But then I remember about 2 weeks ago now, Boris Johnson announced on TV one evening that because of the way the virus was spreading, we had to have a full lockdown. And that caught a lot of people off guard, I think. I remember Peter and I had a phone call about it at the time, and it did seem like a bit of a shock, really. It sounded like something quite draconian. And I think I kind of felt like we weren't necessarily going to see that happen in the UK. It felt like it went against our liberal kind of values, I suppose. But it happened, and here we are 2 weeks in. How have you found it so far, Peter?
Well, it's been a very sunny day today. We were told we couldn't really go out. I've heard on the news residents in our town were out on the seafront, apparently.
Yeah.
We got done having a barbecue, I think, yesterday. But they're saying they might stop us exercising outside for our allocated exercise period.
Yeah, that would really rile people up.
It's worrying. Something I certainly treasure and need, I think, in terms of physical movement. I'm used to walking around a great deal.
I feel like the health minister mentioned that, didn't he, today?
He did, yeah. We've got very nice weather. I'm almost hoping we get bad weather soon, actually, to kind of cool down that type of behaviour, because I certainly don't want to be stuck in.
No.
Really. I do a lot of stuff at home. I do have a job that involves working outside when I get shifts. I haven't got any just at the moment. But the other day I had to do a care shift. I've got an ID card. I've now been given a letter saying I'm a key worker.
Okay.
I've got to carry around. But as I haven't got any work, I'm a key worker without any work at the moment. I'm not exactly a mega key worker, but I do a bit of health and social care work occasionally. Well, normally I do it as a job, part-time, but the place where I work has been shut down completely, the day centre at the moment, so
right.
other opportunities to do stuff in the community, but it's sort of as and when. So I wait to go out with my letter. I always keep it on me anyway, mind you, but I wait to go out and be challenged by the authorities and bring it out and show how important I am. But apart from that, I'm doing stuff at home and listening to the news like Martin is. Talk radio's been very good.
Yeah. James Whale in the evening.
There are other brands available like 5 Live or BC. Radio 4 is good as well, more mainstream, but I haven't watched TV, so I don't know what's on that.
No, I've not watched a lot. I mean,
radio.
A couple of interesting trends, I suppose. I think this really has demonstrated that the BBC is, television-wise, not necessarily radio, but the BBC is pretty defunct now when it comes to people's behaviour patterns with events like this. Everyone is watching streaming media, Netflix and Amazon Prime, but it's just an observation. But I feel like certainly the writing has to be on the wall for the BBC's licence fee as a result of things like this going on, because it really demonstrates that people just aren't watching BBC content in the UK. That you might get the odd person watching. I mean, you'll still get a lot of people watching it, but the vast majority, certainly younger generations, this is where Netflix and streaming media really has come into its own now.
Can the internet take all that though? Is it struggling a bit?
Well, they have.
Video call?
It is struggling. Yeah, they have actually had to reduce the quality of the streaming. So, and I've noticed it because I've got a projector. I mean, this is like proper first world problem, right? But I've got a projector, and I went to watch a film the other night, and it was noticeable on a projector how diminished the bandwidth was, or the bit rate of the video. So they've significantly reduced it. I mean, I don't know what the figure is, but it's certainly not full HD. It's been reduced quite heavily. But I don't think they made the decision to do that. I think the internet has some kind of consortium, and it was decided that the internet as a whole basically just couldn't handle millions and millions of people, or perhaps even almost a billion, trying to stream things through.
Many years ago, and I can't substantiate it, I think I told you this story before, but I heard on the radio about the internet that I think there's 20 people in the world who've got these special cards.
Yeah.
They must go everywhere and have them with them at all times. And if the internet goes down, I think they call a certain number of them to go to somewhere in America.
Yeah, probably a name server.
They stick a few of the cards in and reboot the thing. And apparently they might call 12 and only need 6. I'm making these numbers up, but it's something like that. So if 6 get killed on the way or can't make it, enough get there and they can reboot it. But I can't substantiate.
No, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Program quite a few years ago.
There's a concept.
There is a physical structure there.
Yeah, there is.
Just in a
Yeah.
magical cloud.
They're known as name servers, but they're physical locations. I believe there's about 12 of them. But yeah, exactly. If they all went down, the internet would just go down. Yeah, because nothing would resolve. But yeah, it gets quite technical. But yeah, that's my understanding of it as well. But yeah, they couldn't cope. They knew that they would struggle with the strain of everyone streaming. And that's probably given rise to some of the theories about the 5G agenda as well, because one of the things that the mainstream media have been saying from the outset of this is, well, 5G will solve all this because it will massively increase the bandwidth and the speed everyone has at their disposal for streaming 4K, and then, going into the future 8K and all that business. So that's definitely... you could argue there's evidence of a kind of problem reaction solution stunt going on there with regards to, well, when there's a crisis, then look at what happens to our infrastructure. We need to upgrade to 5G, that kind of thing.
Did you hear someone burnt down to 5G masts?
Yeah, in Birmingham, I think.
Yeah, I think it was in the West Country, wasn't it? I think.
I'm not sure. Okay. Yeah, but yeah,
I thought it was in Bristol actually.
And the media have jumped on that.
I only heard a very brief story, but there does seem to be some strange correlation between 5G and the COVID-19. They both come from Wuhan, or certainly the 5G was only brought out there. There's an idea that it may have weakened immune systems, and then the coronavirus came out, it affected everybody. But maybe it was some sort of experiment that went wrong. I just don't know. It seems a very strange connection between two very different things. But there does seem to be some link somewhere.
There does seem. I mean, Wuhan allegedly is the first city in China to enable like a kind of 5G grid, so that they've become like a digital city or whatever they want to call it. So if that's true, and I mean, I've heard multiple people cite that, but it would be interesting to know if it's actually a fact. But if it is, then that is quite an interesting and significant fact, I think, about what's going on here. It's odd. I mean, another interesting theory. I mean, there's a guy called Dr. Paul Cottrell who's got a very relatively small YouTube channel. I think he's only got about 7,000 subscribers, so he's not like well known like someone like Alex Jones or whoever. But he's quite an academic researcher, and he's done a few interesting interviews. And one of the things that he's revealed, I mean, it's not just him, but I think he's probably one of the most qualified people I've heard say it, is in Wuhan, as well as this 5G connection, they've also got what's known as a BSL level 4 biolab based in Wuhan. BSL stands for biosafety level, apparently, and 4 is the highest category biolab rating. So you've got 1 to 4, 4 being the highest. Apparently we've got about 9 in the UK alone. China's obviously got quite a few, and America, most countries do, but one of them is based in Wuhan, which is just another one of those funny little coincidences that it could be absolutely nothing, or it could be a really strong indicator that we're not being told the truth about what's going on here. I was
talking to someone the other day who's been on our channel before, Nigel Finesse. He's done a few episodes with us in the past, and we were talking about this the other day, and it does seem, okay, let's take it as some kind of influenza type virus. But you've never seen anything like this before, this level of instant lockdown and a military style operation. It does seem to me that clearly, Nick Pope was talking a while ago about the military has plans for everything, or governments have plans for every eventuality, and he said, and I mean every eventuality. So clearly it's something they can bring in to sort of instigate this very quickly. It's not something you could just do without planning it. But I wonder, whether they even know there's more to this than they're telling us, because they would just do it with a flu or AIDS or something like that. They've never done anything like this before. Or is it more of a scam, that type of thing, and they're exaggerating it?
Yeah.
I don't think it could just be in the middle. I think it's either worse or less bad.
Yeah.
It's either a scam or it really is so bad they're just not telling us, and so they've instigated this major sort of operation.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Paul, that guy I mentioned a minute ago, Paul Cottrell, he kind of is coming from the angle that it's way more serious, and they're adding on. It's a bioengineered weapon. He didn't call it a bioweapon. Sorry, he called it bioengineered. So there's a distinction there, because a lot of people are saying it's a bioweapon, but there's an alternate theory that it's. I suppose you could argue, why would they bioengineer it? Surely the purpose of it is a weapon. What else? What other purpose would it solve, though? But this guy doesn't go as far as to call it a weapon, but he says it's bioengineered, and it seems to be some kind of. There's evidence apparently that there's been a level of almost like copy and paste. So if you compare the genotype sequence of this virus with computer code, for those who have the right tools and the right methods to inspect this stuff, they can identify that there's been some evidence of tinkering going on, where things have been copy and pasted in a way that nature wouldn't necessarily do. There's a kind of synthetic element to it, perhaps. So that's interesting. Yeah, exactly. It does. Yeah, but maybe it's a black op thing. So the although it's not acceptable in terms of the legal apparatus we have, perhaps really there's all these secret black ops that go on, where all the governments out there, including ours probably, with Porton Down, maybe they are actually out there working on this stuff. There's even a theory that it came from the US and it was sold to China, and then China had it in this lab, and then for whatever reason it got released, maybe by mistake, but maybe it was intentional. There's just so many angles on this, and it's exhausting trying to get to the bottom of it, really, and have an actual opinion on it, because there's no one theory, I don't think. David Icke did a really interesting video today, being on his YouTube channel. It's available, but with a guy called Sean Atwood, who I hadn't actually heard of before, but he's actually an ex-City banker stroke stockbroker, who I think there's some evidence that he was up to some shenanigans financially that he got put in prison for. But the gist of it is he's now quite an open conspiracy-based researcher. He's no longer in the financial industry at all. But he interviewed David Icke, and Icke was on fire, I must say. But I think we've both been massive fans of David Icke for a long time. but he really was on fire in this episode, in this interview. So I'd highly recommend people go away and watch that on his YouTube channel.
What's the video called?
It's just it's called Event 201, the Event 201 conspiracy. David Icke interviewed by Sean Atwood. So the Event 201 is an interesting one as well. So that they talk about it in the video, but in October of 2019, Bill and Melinda Gates organised an event which was a training exercise to simulate a global pandemic. Can you believe it? So we're talking about classic move here, which we've seen before with things like 9/11. You know, the drills that went on and simulated the exact same hijack scenario as what happened in real life. But they simulated the global pandemic, and pretty much everything played out in this drill in the same way it's playing out in reality. And it was called Event 201. No idea why it was called Event 201, but it was done in New York in some big conference centre, and it was like some kind of global command centre simulation type thing. Not quite sure how they would have done it, maybe with computer simulations and stuff of a pandemic. But it's very interesting, and a lot of people are starting to point to that as evidence of something very wrong with this picture. And because Bill Gates is now coming out and saying that he gave a TED talk today apparently, where he came out and basically said everyone needs to be have a vaccination for this once it's available, but they also need to be chipped, and the chip will specify whether or not you've received the vaccine. And if it's basically like a social contract, so if you refuse the vaccine, you'll probably be refused employment. So this is exactly the kind of thing that people like Ike have been talking about for decades. So this could be a catalyst for the microchip being implanted in people, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing with that fake alien invasion plan a few years ago, 2012, Ian Crane was talking about.
Yeah, Blue Beam.
Almost reminds me of that, except we haven't got the aliens. There's that kind of way they would have done that, but turned into a pandemic. I think it's maybe a version of that they're playing. They may have had the pandemic idea well in the list of ideas, but
it's a really,
if they'd done the alien
it works.
invasion version, I think it would have been something like this. It almost is an alien invasion if it's a virus. It's almost like an alien to us, even if it's from here or man-made. It's still something alien to our system. So it's got that scary factor.
But the one of the things Ike stressed as well, and again, I mean, Ike's obviously not medically trained, so you can't take everything the guy says as you know, the truth and all that business. But I think it's an interesting point, and I kind of feel like he's right. I just feel it in my gut that he's right about this. So I guess it's that whole intuition thing. But he said that the thing that's going on is he doesn't believe there is a virus at all. So what the coronavirus exists, but that is not new. That's been around for a long time, for decades. And there's documents talking about the coronavirus from the 70s, apparently. It goes way back.
Well, coronavirus is just a type.
It's a type, yeah. So it's like a family.
COVID-19
so
is a type of coronavirus.
Yeah, so exactly. So COVID-19 is like a variant from the coronavirus family. But when people are being diagnosed in hospitals with COVID-19, it's not necessarily COVID-19. There is no test that demonstrates that you have COVID-19. There's only a test that tells people that you've got coronavirus. So in other words, it's like saying you've got a corona-based virus inside of you. But they don't know that it's COVID-19. So and if that's true, that's pretty fundamental with in terms of what's going on, because it pretty much demonstrates that the whole thing is absolute BS. Because Ike's saying that we all probably have elements of the coronavirus inside of us, but we've probably had it for a long time, like years, and it just doesn't affect us. It's just
There are these deaths. So how are those?
they're deaths. They're people who would have died anyway. So apparently they're going again. This is only what Ike's saying, and I want to go away and try and get his sources and all that business. But he doesn't generally just make things up. Like, let's face it.
No, I mean there was a 13-year-old boy who died of it, but on the other hand,
He did have.
how many 13-year-old boys die of flu anyway
they've almost always got other conditions though.
Yeah. He didn't have another condition, but it's not impossible that happens anyway and it wouldn't be used.
But sometimes people do just die, you know.
They do.
There was a case of a 21-year-old girl a couple of weeks ago, and it was tragic. She died, but it was all over social media that she was the youngest, at the time, she was the youngest victim in the UK of COVID-19. Turns out she died of a heart attack, and the coroner specified it was COVID-19 on the death certificate purely because he said that she'd been coughing a lot. There was reports that she'd been coughing a lot. So he basically put, well, it must be COVID-19 then, and he had to go withdraw it. So, and the Guardian actually published an article about that, and they withdrew it the next day, which I thought was very suspicious. They withdrew the story about it being a coroner's screw up, or maybe it wasn't even a screw up. You know what I mean? But another thing, like I said, again is interesting, is apparently it's getting to the point now where apparently in hospitals, people with terminal cancer, like late stage cancer, who are definitely about close to death, they're being diagnosed with COVID-19, and then they die, and then they say it was caused by COVID-19, and they get added to the COVID-19 statistics.
Yeah.
So
something funny happened the other day. I think it was yesterday or Friday. I think it was Friday actually. There's a hospital in Watford, which is actually near where they had that Bilderberg Fringe a few years ago, some may remember. Anyway, he said it had a critical incident, and it was overrun by cases, and they had to stop the normal A&E accident emergency admissions. I'm just going to click it through it, hold on. They had to stop the normal accident and emergency admissions because they had all these wards full of COVID-19. But the same day, they just opened this huge hospital in the Excel Centre, which is, they won't have 4,000 beds yet, but they can have up to 4,000 beds. And I thought, well, Watford's in North London, and they've got this huge thing they've just opened, and they have Prince Charles opening it on a video link and everything, and we see all these beds lined up, and great, you know.
yeah.
I thought, why aren't they taking them from Watford to go into that facility? And I haven't heard them doing that, and it seemed a bit strange that
That is strange.
they hadn't sort of used it. It was almost sitting there waiting with no one being put in it, and I'm sure it will be used, but they didn't say on the news, we're overrun with these cases, we're going to move some of them down to this Excel Centre.
No, I've not. Yeah, exactly. I've not read any reports of anyone going there yet, which does seem odd, because they're now saying that the figures may have started to plateau in London. The new case figures maybe have started to plateau, which implies, touch words, that they have got a handle on it now. If it even is a thing that has, that they need to get a handle on, if you know what I mean. I really personally, I'm in two minds about this. I really am. Most of last week, I was probably in the camp of believing it was what we were being told by the mainstream media. It was this horrible virus that's causing mayhem and really targeting elderly people and vulnerable people, and we really should listen to the government's advice and stay indoors, all that business. But I've started to get a bit more sceptical, I think, in the last couple of days, just because of some of the stuff that's beginning to circulate about the way they're working out these figures about the deaths. Like apparently a member of the Italian government a few days ago made it pretty clear, and he didn't even try and hide the fact. He just announced it like it was no big deal, which was kind of weird. But he kind of said, well, 99% of the deaths in Italy, they've had, the people who have died have had multiple conditions other than the coronavirus or COVID-19. So it's not COVID-19 that's killing them. It's a fact. It's a combination of factors. It's so difficult to ascertain whether or not someone should be classed as a victim of COVID-19 or not. I suppose it's like, does it tip their immune system over the edge, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But so could a flu though, or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's anything could tip somebody over the edge if they're that unwell. And apparently the numbers of deaths in the UK this time last year were about the same as they are at the moment, which is a real alarm bell for me, because it's like, well, hold on.
You feel if it was, I know I'm not belittling anyone who's died, but
No.
you feel if it really was a deadly biological weapon, it would, you have like 1 million deaths by now, or more than that. It would really be absolute emergency,
Yeah.
like a horror film type thing. And
Yeah.
it just seems to be a bad thing, but like you say, unless it's on top of other flu things, or it's not, what's the word I'm looking for, levels of difference, above what you might get from a normal flu.
No.
It's not like, to justify, I'm not saying to justify all this, it sounds like it's again saying it doesn't matter that they say we've got to have all these measures to a degree, but the complete lockdown is just another level of activity that they've never done before for anything like this.
No.
So in a way that almost contradicts saying they could think it's worse than they're telling us, in a sense that, there have been deaths, but it's not so many leagues of difference above the deaths we've had from things before that they didn't do all this for.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult one. Are they exaggerating, or do they think it's going to turn way worse by some exponential growth that they're not?
Yeah, like a mutation, and a second.
Almost something else is going to happen. I mean, I feel the expert was almost waiting for something else to happen.
They. I mean, I've heard the government, even the main guys who give the daily press talks in the UK, the chief medical officer, etc. They've openly said that there is definitely a danger of like a second wave caused by a mutation, and maybe that's actually the really serious part of this that they're gearing up towards is a mutation phase. But who knows? But I mean, Ike and various others, they're of the camp of the school of thought now that there is just nothing going on. It's all just a PRS game, problem reaction solution. So it's interesting. I'm trying to. It's difficult to try and understand it from multiple angles and try and see how the game might be being played. And I suppose it's important to also try and figure out what else is going on in the world that they might be trying to hide. And it does get a bit wacky when you start thinking about that, like alien invasion. Are they trying to hide the fact there's some UFO event going on, or do you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it sounds like it's trivialising the subject, but it has crossed my mind they could do something like that. I mean, I don't think they are, but I don't think I'm not saying this is the right thing, because I don't. But let's just say it was an alien virus, and they just were not telling us because they didn't want us to panic. I mean, I don't think it is that, but that's the kind of scenario, something like that. If it was, they probably would invent a story like this to sort of do a kind of cover story, But I don't know, we think that is what they're doing, but it's an interesting angle on it's the sort of thing they would do if they cover something up, has been done in the past. Those sort of tricks, but with less lethal situations. Which we discussed, I think, in other episodes on here. We don't need to go over it now.
No.
But I think we're sort of sitting on the fence a bit. It sounds like
definitely,
it's a difficult place to be for too long.
It's very hard to.
Dealing with the day-to-day situation anyway, of having to.
There's something about what's happening around me and around all of us. I don't know. I'm beginning to sense that there's some agenda at play here. And I can't quite.
Or compliance, or.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I think one thing it's amazing how quickly people acquiesce, like the situation. People. I mean, obviously, I know you were saying earlier that there's actually people going out sunbathing and sticking their fingers up to this whole thing, but most people are just staying indoors, and they're. But I get it. I understand that they think they're doing the right thing, but it does, to me, this really does demonstrate that whole thing about, how is it possible that the few can control the many, and it's just because the many just acquiesce immediately once they get any sense that there's a threat, and they just get herded like sheep, basically. And it's
the trouble with this particular thing, with certain other things, it might. I mean, if you think of World War II, it's like you've got to put your lights out, put that light out, there's an air raid on.
Yeah.
That was the thing, you wouldn't be able to have a light on. But I think in the daytime, okay, there's more
Yeah, you would,
And
exactly.
they changed everything, got rid of everything. There are things that they can never have. They would have taken years of arguing in Parliament to even do. Like maybe paying everyone's wages, almost like a basic income and things like that. They've done it in like 2 weeks. They've pretty much rammed it through. Not quite in name, but similar concepts. Things that would have taken forever. There's always said that a war can bring about great catalysing change very quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a great excuse, that something like this has. But in a way, with this particular example, you really are seeing that if you're walking towards somebody, you don't step out of their way. I always do. But if you don't, you're kind of like a pariah, and it's very much, and you can infect them or they can infect you. So it's very, it's not like some things where you might sort of, like say 9/11, say, because you can walk around looking a bit dodgy with a backpack, and they might say, you could have a bomb in there or something. It's not.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that very often, though. Whereas this, it's every time you go out, you could potentially be touching someone, or you haven't washed your hands or something, and it's much more pervasive of every situation. I would say, as a fear, focus of fear.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It might be rightly so, but even rightly or wrongly, it still is in every situation and every moment. Whereas most things, like here at the railway station nowadays, if you see something suspicious, report it, and that. It's only in those sort of situations. You're not getting it everywhere, on every street, and literally on the beach or whatever. This is like every situation that you're experiencing its effects, and it's very, very unhealthy and very, quite stressful, really, in a kind of slow way.
It is,
yeah. The ups and downs, I'm sure you do on this. Everyone does, and it's difficult. And to see where it's going to go in a few weeks.
Well, if worst case scenario is they say, right, we need another month of this, which they probably will do, I think. And then they say, and we need to make the lockdown measures more stringent. You can't go out for your daily exercise now. It'll be interesting to see how people react to that. If people just acquiesce to it. In Italy, apparently there are signs now that people are getting a bit fed up with the restrictions. That there's not rioting, but there's some reports of a bit of looting going on in Sicily, where they're raiding shops and organising kind of looting gangs. And people are just starting to creep out of their apartments and stuff in the middle of the day, and the police are having to be quite heavy-handed with them to get them back inside and all that kind of thing. So if it goes on in Italy much longer, I think there might be trouble. But could that happen here? Who knows? I know it could. I suppose it's the same in any country. How long can you tolerate this kind of thing? These restrictions?
Well, clothes aren't seen as a necessary purchase, and probably because it's the summer,
Yeah.
You're not necessarily going to buy anything new. But eventually something's going to be needed that you can't get in the grocery store or whatever. And you could have some hardware stores around, but how long can they drag it out? It's difficult to say. If they've done it over the winter, it would be worse in a way, but then you might want to go out more in the summer. It's a difficult one. Because all the films aren't on, the films are closed. Eventually, it's just so boring, they cancel so many events.
People are going to be very down and
nothing to do.
No,
I'm not a particular sports fan, but even something like Wimbledon is off. That's normally in June. If you're going to be stuck in all day, it's something to watch. Eventually, and even like soap operas are running out of episodes because the actors can't make the new ones, and eventually it's going to be a very, very sort of dry old time. You're going to have to really get your own hobbies and stuff to do, and then if you can't get the stuff to do that,
exactly.
It's not quite the end of the world, but it's, if you're used to a kind of, have it easy consumer society that you can buy all the things you want, suddenly it's quite different kettle of fish, really.
There's a lot of people who are going to be really suffering mentally with what's happening.
Oh yeah.
And you'll get like the prepper types who probably love what's happening in a way, but we don't really have many of those in the UK. That's more like an American thing.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm trying to sort of think about it like from a prepper's perspective. It's like, it's kind of just got a bunker in, but it's like you can't really do that unless you've got a plot of land where you can grow your own food and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, we need a big cupboard with lots of food in.
Exactly. You always have to go back to the supermarket.
Keep a few days stuff really.
Yeah.
If you don't get it all in one go, to say you're hoarding it, you'd have to build it up.
Yeah.
The only way that kind of be an arcane approach in the UK, buy a few tins every week.
Just keep getting. Yeah, it's too late now though. But yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and I suppose the other angle on this we've not really mentioned is the stock market and all that business. I've monitored it, and at first that seemed like the biggest story in town. Actually, the way the stock market was going about a week and a half ago, it was unbelievable watching the share prices drop and the S&P 500 values and the FTSE 100. It was just tanking, just like it's never happened before, really, in the way. But there's been this huge $2 trillion bailout, which is way bigger than the 2008 crash bailout, which that is staggering to think that. And that's just happens, and it's not even a big deal. So maybe...
Any of these aspects would have been major stories in their own right.
Unbelievably big story, yeah. But it's almost like I suppose one angle on this is perhaps that is actually what's going on. It's like a kind of huge power grab, and there's just been this massive bailout that's propped up the economy because it was about to crash maybe, and they justified it. But yeah, I don't know. Again, it's just another angle on it. But the one thing Ike mentioned that I thought was interesting was all of these UK and Western-based companies that are now going to be really struggling, and their stock market values are going to be really, really low. Who's going to buy them up suddenly? It will probably be China. So China's gaining more and more power with potentially with what's happening. China is gaining more and more power, and maybe that's the end goal here is for China to become like this world policeman. I mean, they've got the numbers to do it, and that's quite a scary idea. But that's just I suppose yet another angle really. It's just is this all part of a Chinese conspiracy, or maybe it's not a Chinese conspiracy? Maybe it's a global New World Order conspiracy, but they're using China as a vehicle to do it, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I mean if it's a New World Order thing, they would always use somewhere as a trigger.
Yeah.
They use something. I mean, it could affect President Trump and get Democrats in or something, but I don't think it's too big a thing for just that. If it is a New World Order thing, they may have just decided that this is when they're going to do it. It wasn't 2012, it was now,
Yeah.
It could well be the big one that we've long predicted. Maybe, the event might tangibly blow over in a few months and we'll be kind of back to normal, but things might be very different and you're used to that kind of lockdown. And there's bound to be things that slip through in the meantime.
Yeah, if this goes on for months, people...
And they may say you've got to have vaccinations.
Yeah, that's the big fear.
It takes someone to say, you have to have a microchip and that. They can use it to bring the next stage through. The thing itself might blow over, but, once you've had a fire, you get a fire alarm kind of thing.
Yeah.
They can use it to justify whatever they want to have next.
Exactly. Yeah, well, it'd be interesting this time of the year where things are, like, looking back, reflecting what did that change, what rights, what freedoms did we lose as a result of that episode, the pandemic period.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope we don't, lose just in the meantime, the ability to go and have them. Let's say it's an hour's exercise. Apparently that's not quite true. It's the exercise you would normally take. But
right.
Going to stupid lengths like driving to a beauty spot.
Yeah.
Just in your own area. But if everyone's going to congregate in a park and things like that, it's going to really screw it up. They'll just pull that, and then you'll be maybe arrested or cautioned or fined or whatever just for walking down the road virtually. Unless you go into a supermarket, it's a pretty bland thing to spend doing.
It is. It's depressing. It's horrible. And then I mean, luckily, some people are lucky, some people aren't in that regard. But most people are finding they're having to queue outside supermarkets now to get in.
Yeah, metres apart.
Yeah, and I was queuing for about half an hour the other day, and that was probably best case scenario from what I've read about other areas of the country.
Yeah.
But I mean, luckily there are smaller places where you can go where doesn't seem quite as bad. But yeah, that's a very odd feeling, queuing up outside supermarkets. It feels like something out of the Soviet era. Do you know what I mean?
It does, yeah.
And Alan Watt kind of said about that. He was saying,
discussing for the Matrix.
Yeah. He said something the other day in a podcast he put out where there was a saying in Soviet Russia where if you see a queue, join it. And I think that's about sort of acquiescence to the state, you know. That's how I read that quote. It's like, or maybe on an individual level, it's like there's obviously a reason why they're queuing, so it's like I'll just join the queue. But I'm not saying that's quite what's going on here, because people are going to the supermarket because they need to go shopping.
Yeah.
But what if there's eventually there might be queues for everything, like petrol, and I mean I guess petrol there won't be queues for because no one can drive anywhere, so that's not really in demand now.
That's right. There's always going to be in a particular situation that, if you think of science fiction stories that will predict breakdowns of society, they'll never quite have it the same as it is, but some of it is, some of it isn't.
Yeah. No, it's
they normally have, there's a program called Survivors years and years ago on BBC TV where they had I think it was some sort of virus got out, it may have been a pouring down or somewhere like that, and it dropped it and it spread and everyone died off, and it was just down to a very small population left. I remember it was quite an effective program at this day, but that dealt with what would happen if that kind of absolutely scary, horrible, exaggerated version happened, but they didn't do a version where it's just, with all respect, but a few hundred, a few thousand casualties, but it causes all this type of change to society. That's not what a TV show normally shows. Yeah. So it's got a bit of the SF feel, but from another point of view, like David Icke was saying, in a way, if it isn't many more than you get from normal flu, we don't know, it's not being just misappropriated. Some sort of agenda. Doesn't mean Boris Johnson and that necessarily even know about it. I mean, it could be above their heads.
Exactly. I think it would be. Yeah, this is a deep state sort of scenario, like above the head of nation states, perhaps. It's if there is a conspiracy here. I mean, obviously there is the possibility. It is what we're being told, and that in itself is that's worrying and all that business. But the hospital stuff does seem very, very fishy to me. That's the area that I'm beginning to feel might unravel this whole thing. There's reports, for example, again, this is just people typing comments on YouTube videos. I'm not saying it could be used as evidence in a court of law. Sure. But people are saying things like, I've got a friend who's an NHS worker and there's nothing going on in the hospitals, it's quiet. Or it's certainly no busier than it usually is. And that's not the scenario that people, I think, have in their heads at the moment when they're clapping outside on a Thursday night. Do you know what I mean? For the NHS workers. But the flip side of that coin is, well, no, that it just hasn't hit that hospital yet. It's coming. The numbers, but we're kind of being told that the lockdown measures are working, so therefore, potentially we've plateaued. I think that's something they said over the weekend. We've hit that plateau now where new cases are starting to flatten out.
We'll see how that goes with that hospital in East London, and I think there's several more as well. Or they're not exactly built, but they're adapted buildings. See how full they get, because that must have been predicting a hell of a lot. And if that doesn't get filled up, then
if that gets filled up, there will be visual evidence of that, and it will be clear to everybody that there's a serious problem happening around us. But I mean, there's video of stuff going on in Italy which looks horrific when you see it, but there is, I hate to say it, but there's definitely also some evidence of quite a few shenanigans going on with the video footage. And there's also a meme that's circulated on the internet that's worth mentioning, where you saw pictures of nurses after a 20-hour shift taking off their masks and goggles, eye protection, and they've got bruises all over their face and stuff as a result of that, and that's really nasty to see. But there's also evidence that those pictures were photoshopped, so that is there's some manipulation going on at the level of memes going around the internet and things. So it all to me seems to point towards this being not quite what it seems. But people are being taken along for a ride at the moment on a mass scale, maybe. But I don't want to say 100% because I don't know.
To see, the trouble.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you can sit here and say all this, but then if you or me come down with it, then yeah, that's all the evidence we need that there's a real issue. But I mean, in Brighton, I think there's been like 70 cases. We've had it quite lightly here so far.
Yeah.
I keep an eye on that daily. I check the Brighton and Hove figures. It's really very low here at the moment. That obviously could change. But it's interesting, because we were one of the first places in the country to get it, weren't we? Because of that.
Some guy came, didn't he, from some holiday?
Yeah, a super spreader they called him.
That's right, yeah.
And he went to some pub near, in Hove, the Grenadier pub, and they cordoned off the whole pub and all that business. But nothing really happened. No one really came down particularly unwell. I think there was a care home in Brighton. Apparently there was a report of a care home where 10 people died, and that was in the Argus. But I've only seen that reported in one place, which is kind of weird. So I would have thought the national news would have picked up on that.
Sure they died, or they didn't just have it? I don't think they died.
Yeah, I might need to revisit that. Maybe they didn't die, but there was a care home in Brighton that definitely had a big case of it, apparently. But this is just local news reporting going on. They may have got it totally wrong. It may have just been that they had flu-like symptoms. It may not have been COVID-19. Because how can they know it's COVID-19? There's no tests that prove it. That prove you've got it.
No, well, that's what they're trying to develop.
Yeah.
Things take a lot of time. You can't just knock them up in 5 minutes. That's the trouble. So by the time it's over, they might have a great test, but it'll be too late. But that's maybe something that can't be helped.
Anyway, I suppose that it's interesting, but we'll have to just keep an eye on it like everyone else at the moment.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great.
But yeah, we'll hang in there, and hope everyone listening to the podcast as well, they remain safe and stay vigilant during this very odd period.
The information where unknown forces strike the edge of ecology.